This former soldier. I want to pick up on one of your letters, inspiration. I forget what your last I was. I want to talk about one, integrity. You and I and many of those in this room grew up both with a family before we joined the military, and then in our military career where integrity was the basis of everything we did with our troops. And even if you had a scent, particularly as an officer, if you had even a whiff that you were waffling or you didn't have integrity, your career was done. You wouldn't have served 40 years. I wouldn't have served 30 years if that was the case. It strikes me in our nation and even within our military-industrial complex, but mainly on the military side and the government side that's getting involved, that's not true. I mean, the integrity of our country is questionable. And I just wonder, from your perspective, you've served and no one has ever questioned your integrity, nor should they, and you've been very candid throughout your career in uniform and out of uniform as to things you're talking about us today. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, do you think that is somehow the problem? Because what we're seeing throughout the world, and I'm trying not to be political here or make a political statement, but we have the highest levels of leadership in our country are still failing to acknowledge the role of Islam in terrorism. The two words are not even used together, and at some point, from my interpretation, is that's lying. It's deception. It's not recognizing what is true. And getting back to your overarching point about a strategy, that we need a strategy, I think many of us were raised, in order to have a strategy, you have to define the problem. I mean, you have to, your end state is clearly stated, but don't we have to be truthful with ourselves and with the American people as to what the threat is to our country before we can devise a strategy? And in your view, how are we doing that?
Yeah, it's a great question, because here's why President Bush called it a global war on terror and not on Islamic terror or something, and why the current president doesn't want to put the two together either. And that is because as non-Muslims, we're liable to give a broader dignity to the terrorists because it's linking their violence to Islam. And most, as you know, they've killed more Muslims than they've killed Christians, Jews, and everyone else, Hindus combined. And so it is tough, whether you're President Bush, anyone in a position of responsibility that looks at this is trying to parse out. But I think that's why you want to ask the question, is political Islam in our best interest? And if not, what are we doing to support the countervailing forces? Not to define it in terms of whether it's Islamic or not, but when the president of Egypt, the key Arab country, the third of all Arab people under his country, comes out and he challenges it, we should immediately come up on the 2nd of January and say, we believe in this man right here. I didn't see anything hardly in the newspapers about it. Here he was putting literally his life on the line, and what did we do in support of him? Nothing. In the United Arab Emirates, they refused to accept political Islam. I mean, I can go on and on. So, but when you change, now let's hold that thought and go over to your point about integrity. There is personal integrity and there is managerial integrity. I think the personal integrity of most of our people is sound. I mean, if you listen to any one TV station, depending on who they like and who they don't, you'll think everybody's gone to hell in a handbasket, okay? But the fact is, when you wander around this town, you actually meet the men and women. They have a vision, and it may not be the one we share, but they're trying. But the managerial integrity seems to have broken down in our system. And so I would depersonalize it a little bit, and I would look at it as, how do we support those who agree that we want secular governments that protect religious people of any type. Notice when the ISIS killed the Coptic Christians in Libya, and President el-Sisi, a Muslim leader of a dominantly Muslim country, sends in his pilots to bomb them because they killed his Christians. He said, these are not a minority, these are Egyptians. We're going to defend Egyptians. And again, we did not come out in support of them. We won't ask the fundamental question that then allows us to align ourselves with those who have the courage and the integrity, both personal and managerial, to fight an enemy. And frankly, with two irreconcilable worldviews. I mean, you and I are never going to accept that girls don't go to school. I don't care what they do, we're not going to accept it. So we're going to fight. That's all there is to it. And I'm already on record as saying whether or not I support fighting them, you know, say. So No need to repeat it, but, and thanks, Mike, for what you did for 3 decades.